I want to talk today's session. I want to talk about how do we actually start creating these SMART goals. How many of you heard of these SMART goals before? Type in yes if you heard of these SMART goals before. Type in yes if you heard of it. Now, I've got a new version of this, right? And I'm going to kind of give you my version of this. And when I sort of designed this, I thought to myself, a lot of people always use the old version of SMART goals. And whenever we are setting new goals, whenever we are looking to achieve something new, it doesn't matter when we're doing them in the year, it could be the start of the year, middle of the year. In fact, you should be doing this every single month, actually, right? So when we talk about these SMART goals, really one of the things we talk about, and also why do you want to use these SMART goals? Well, first of all, you need a process to keep you on track to consistency, right? What do I mean by this? Well, consistency actually is the key to creating more success in your life, whether it's, creating more entrepreneurship, whether it's creating more money, whether it's getting in better shape, whether it's, getting into better relationships, whether it's earning more income or passive income. How many of you agree that consistency is actually the main driver for a lot of the things we talk about? Give me a yes. Give me a yes if you believe that the consistency is the key here, right? And so as I was designing these SMART goals, and they're not the ones that you not normally think they are. And I'll tell you the difference between the old one and also the new one. And the problem with the old one is that it doesn't have the elements in there to keep you consistent, right? It teaches you how to set it, which is great. But I think a lot of you actually want to start having more consistency, because the consistency, the 1%, the 2%, the 10% every single day, every single year, every single month, they all add up, right? So some of the biggest problems that I've realized is that there are just too many distractions, right? Too many distractions. How many of you agree that when you try and do things, there's so many things that you want to do, and then sometimes we get a little bit confused? How many of you have experienced a bit of distraction before? Type in yes. Type in yes if you've experienced some kind of distraction, all right? Or maybe some of you might have overwhelmed, right? How many of you have been overwhelmed before? Like, you want to do something, there's so much stuff that you want to do. It's like, oh my God, like this is overwhelming. And it's very overwhelming. Even for myself, there's so many things I want to do, but there's just so much to do, and there's so little time to do it. So this is why when I design these new SMART goals, it actually helps you focus and keeps you less distracted. Because this, one of the biggest problems is there's just too much to do. Even when you set the goals, it's like, okay, well, I got to do this, I got to do this, I got to do this, I got to do this. And unfortunately, when you're trying to set all these things up straight away, it's very hard to implement them, right? Because even though you know what to do, I mean, look, let me ask you an honest question, right? How many of you already know what to do, but you're still not doing it? Type in me, come on, be honest. Type in me, come on. I know a lot of you are. So we've got to stay focused in a way that allows us to achieve these goals a lot faster, right? And that's why the problem is also a lot of people have no direction. So what happens is you're doing one thing, then you have an idea for something else, and then you basically switch course onto another thing, and you have another idea for something else, and you switch course to another thing. This is what we call shiny object syndrome, right? How many of you are also guilty of this? I know I am, right? So we always want to be in a direction which is getting us closer to our goal. This is why when I design these new SMART goals, it also keeps us in direction. And also there's a lot of confusion on what to do. I'll give an example. Like, how many realize this? At the start of every year, people always want to get into shape. And then there's all these diets that come out. You had Atkins diet, vegan diet, you had the ketogenic diet, you had intermittent fasting, you have fasting. There's all these different, and like there's just so much like, okay, what should I do? Should I eat carbs or not eat carbs? Should I eat a lot of meat? Because if I eat a lot of meat, then I can get high cholesterol and get high fats. And it's very confusing. How many of you agree? Give me a yes. And this combined with what we're trying to do also gives us that confusion of trying to do something, but yet we are not in that position to be able to create the clarity that allows us to achieve success. So let me give you the old versus the SMART goals. By the way, does anyone know? Well, I know some of you, I just saw some of you typing in right now, but we've been told in the past that if we want to achieve our SMART goals, the S stands for what? S stands for specific, that we should make our goals specific, right? And I think that's okay, but being too specific means sometimes you can miss out on the big picture, right? Yeah, it's important to know what you want, but sometimes, how many agree that you don't even know what you want sometimes? Type in yes, right? Some of you have to go through one thing to get to something else in order to find that thing that's specific. Also measurable, right? So when we are measuring something, measuring can only be done if you've taken action, right? So yes, you can measure your goals, but the problem is most people don't even take action. How many know I'm talking about? Come on, give me a yes, right? I know a lot of you already know what to do, but you're still not doing it. So how can you measure something if you're not even taking action, right? So this is why I think sometimes the old SMART goal setting is it's a little bit outdated, right? Achievable. Okay, so achievable, what does that really mean? How do you know what's achievable? How do you know what's not achievable? How do you know that you can't make, like some of you might say, well, you know, John, my target is 100,000 or 1 million this year, right? Well, how do you know that? How do you know if that's achievable to you or not? Because achievable really is relative, isn't it? Right? Somebody else has achieved it. Like, for example, when Bannister ran that 4-minute mile, people thought it was humanly impossible to run that mile, but yet they did, right? So whenever I'm thinking about things being achievable, people always think, okay, well, John, they also have to be realistic. Now, the problem is when you put realistic to it, are you typically aiming higher or are you typically aiming lower? Are you typically aiming higher or are you typically aiming lower when you do things that are realistic, right? Type in higher or lower, right? Typically, when you do realistic goals, you tend to set things lower because and this is the problem with this, right? You set goals so low that you hit them. So we want to also be thinking bigger and be more organic as we do this, right? And also the last one is timely, right? Well, when's the best time to do something, right? When's the best time to have a baby, right? There's no real best time. I mean, yes, timing does play a part of business, but also what I think is more important is to have more success. And by the way, in the past, I have used SMART goal setting, right? And after being in business for over 2 decades now, I'm like, wow, maybe we need to start changing things up. So does this work? Absolutely. I mean, it does work. It's better than having nothing. But I've evolved that now to something even better, right? And it's a series of questions. And by the way, as we do this training today, I want to go through and do these exercises with you, because if you try and do them by yourself, it's going to be very hard for you to take action afterwards. And one of the things I realized is that don't put something off for today or for tomorrow that can be done today. And sometimes it requires that little bit of extra time, but a little bit of extra time you spend now will save you hours and hours, if not days in the future. So how many of you would be up for this? Give me a yes. Give me a yes. Come on, give me a yes. All right. So the first S in the new SMART goals is sacrifice. Do you know the reason why people are not successful in what they do? Because they're too comfortable, right? They're too comfortable. You have to, and I know some of you may disagree with this. Some of you will go, John, well, that's not business. And if I've got to sacrifice something, every single person I know who have achieved a level of success have sacrificed something in their life. Either they sacrificed their personal life, they sacrificed their health, they sacrificed their personal time, they sacrificed personal relationships. I know at university, I sacrificed a lot of my nights out so I could study and I could get good grades. So you have to sacrifice something. And people say, well, John, do you have to do that? Well, yes, right? And sorry to be blunt about this, but I want to be real with you guys. I don't want to tell you how easy something's going to be, because everything great in life takes time and takes work. And the sooner we come to that realization, the sooner we're able to take ownership. How many of you agree? Give me a yes. Right? So the first S is sacrifice. I'm going to go into that in a little bit more detail. The second part of the SMART new goals, right? The new SMART goals, the M stands for master. So instead of measuring how good we're at something, maybe we need to spend more time mastering something. It's interesting because people always say to me, John, how can you just stand on stage without any preparation and still be able to speak for hours? Because I've spent over 2 decades, over 20 years doing this. So how many of you read a book called Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell? Type in yes if you have. It's an incredible book. If you haven't read that book, I highly recommend go to Amazon. It's called Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell. And there's a concept in there that talks about the 10,000 hour rule. 10,000 hours means that in order for you to master a skill, to truly master a skill, you have to have 10,000 hours of practice and implementation. So when people say to me, oh yeah, John, I've been playing the piano for 20 years. Well, how many times have you played? Oh, I play once a year. That's very different to someone that plays 1 hour every day, isn't it? So it's not how long you've been doing something. It's actually the time you've been investing in it to master the process. And I can tell you hand on heart, every single day for the last 20 years, I've been mastering and honing my skills on speaking, on marketing, on sales, on networking, on presentation, on online marketing, on social media. I've been mastering these processes. So what I'm asking you to do, I'm asking all of you to master these processes as well, right? You need to look at what you're not good at. And again, I'll go through a series of questions and we'll work these exercises out to realize what we're going to focus on. Because truly to measure is to master, right? We need to master the new ways of things that we want to do. And this is why for a lot of you, some of you are already masters at things and you try and develop new things when actually you should be doubling down on what you're already good at. So for example, for me, I see that I'm pretty good at creating content. I suck at the paperwork and I'm not very good implementation. So I have a team in place to do that. And we're going to talk about that in a second as well. Why that's so important to know what your strengths are as well. When you're mastering a skill, you're also taking action. So when something is achievable, it's only achievable through action. How many of you agree? Give me a yes. Right? In order for me to achieve something, I first must take a step forward. I first must learn before I earn. Right? If I want to, like, for example, if I think myself, I want to speak Mandarin, right? And is it achievable? Yeah, it's achievable because other people I know have done it. But actually, you see, the achievable has a direct feedback loop back to what you believe you can and can't do, right? Because the human potential is very high. And the action that we take depends on the results that we get, depends on what the feedback that we get. So actually, the third part of this, of the SMART goals, is S.M.A. The A is the action, right? And we talk about how do we actually do that? Because actually, a lot of you already know what you should be doing, but yet you're still not doing it, right? So this is why, and for me, yeah, I always repeat myself all the time, right? I repeat myself over and over and over again. Why? Because it takes sometimes 10 or 20 times for you to listen to what I say in order to do it. How do you know I'm talking about? Give me a yes. Give me a yes. So this is why I tend to repeat myself a lot. And first of all, as a reminder to me, because, I'm also guilty of some of these things that I'm not doing that I should be doing. And I'm going to talk about some of these questions that we're going to really be truthful with ourselves and answer them, truthfully. Number 4, right? Being realistic also means to repeat. Right, being realistic only becomes reality if it is acted upon. So action combined with repetition and to repeat the process. Honestly, that's all I've done. Like, for example, when I started JL.club, I just repeated the process for MSI.club, right? Have you seen this exact same model? My events that I run, I just repeat the same process again and again and again and again. It's what we call the cookie cutter system. So actually, the R in the SMART goal setting, to achieve that goal, means that you need to reinforce it and to repeat that process over and over and over again. This is why I think this is a very powerful way to see how we do the SMART goals. And the T, timely, means to treat yourself doing this. Do you know, I know so many people that just work, and they don't treat themselves, right? You have to treat yourself. Do you know why? Everyone type in why, right? Because when you treat yourself, you start to get a reset in the goal set, right? So you get a reset in the goal set. So once you, because what's happening is, and I see this a lot, it's like a lot of the goals that a lot of you set to achieve, it ends up turning into one never-ending goal. It's like a goalpost that keeps moving every time you hit it. So it never feels like you hit it. How many I'm talking about right now? Give me a yes, right? You know exactly what I'm talking about. And yes, you're absolutely right. It's serotonin that makes you feel well. Dopamine hits. You've got to get those dopamine feel-good hits that reinforce this feeling to create a habit that allows you to repeat the process again. So I'm going to go into the first one of sacrifice, right? Whenever I'm talking about sacrificing something, people go, well, John, like, God, this sounds like a big step you got to do. No, right? Sacrificing is asking this question is, okay, what are you willing to give up? What are you willing to give up? And we're going to do an exercise in a second. What are you willing to give up? Some of you are not willing to give up Netflix nights. Some of you are not willing to give up going clubbing. Some of you are not willing to give up, your phone. Some of you are not willing to give up, your date nights. Remember, sacrifice. Something like, we only have so many hours in this. Something has to give in order for something else to carry on moving, right? It's the law. Like, you can't burn the candle at both ends. You have to burn it from one end or the other end, right? Now, that's not to say that you neglect your relate. Like, let's say, for example, you sacrifice some of your personal time. I'm not saying that you neglect it completely. You just need to. It's not what you're doing. It's how. It's kind of like intermittent fasting, isn't it? Intermittent fasting means that you don't change what you eat. You change the times in which you eat it, right? It's the same thing with what I'm telling you right now. I'm not saying sacrifice your, personal relationships with your wife, and that's not what I'm saying at all. So please don't confuse that with this. What I mean is that, okay, you're still going to have your date nights, but you're just going to do it at certain times. The problem is a lot of you are mixing everything up. So that the problem with that is that you're not time blocking. So when I'm sacrificing, like a cinema night, for example, there are a lot of films that I want to watch, right? But I'm going to sacrifice that because I know that 2-3 hours spent watching that film, I could have built a funnel, right? And so sometimes we have to delay that gratification, right? Another thing is like, what's currently sucking up your time? Do you know one thing that sucks up a lot of my time is I get so many phone calls from my friends, my colleagues, my business partners. Oh, hey, John, you want to come out? I can't help it sometimes. Like, yeah, I'll come out because I know we can have a lot of fun. I know we can talk about a lot of ideas, but I know that, journey into London's probably going to take me an hour, right? Depending on which traffic or depending on where they are in London, right? I know that we're going to sit down, chit chat for a little bit, order some food, have a few cups of coffee, and it just drags out. And before long, half of your day is gone. So, like, I'm not saying that you shouldn't go out and do that. What I'm saying is that sacrifice or delaying that gratification, short-term sacrifice for long-term gains, is how you set the time. Because I'm telling you, the reason why a lot of you are not or did not achieve the goals last year that you set is because you didn't make time for it. Am I right? Yes or no? Type in yes if you know what I'm talking about. You did not make time for it, right? It's kind of like how people are trying to save money. What they do is they pay out everything first, and then what's left they save or they spend. In fact, it should be the opposite way around. You should be paying yourself first. The things like for education, for investments, that should be first, and everything else should be left to pay for bills. So it's actually the opposite way around. So whenever things are sucking up our time, this is what we need to be very conscious of. And here's the problem with this. The thing that sucks at your time is sometimes the things that you enjoy doing, right? So this is why I need you to start writing down truthfully. And by the way, don't lie to yourself, right? Really write down, okay, this is what happens. Okay, I end up going out, my friends are doing this. Or maybe I go on too many holidays. Like for me last year, right, I did actually spend a lot of time away, right? So I lost a bit of focus. So, but did those end up being other things? Yeah, it did. But still, you got to look at what that short-term goal is right now. Number 3 is that where are you actually spending your time right now? So a little exercise I want you to do is I want you to all grab a piece of paper right now, and I want you to write down 1 to 24, because there's 24 hours in a day. And you want to write down next to hour number 1. So obviously you probably sleep for 5, 6, 7, 8 hours. So you block that time out. But once you wake up, what did you do in that hour? And you will find that a lot of you waste a lot of time doing stuff that it's not leading to the end result. So this is why it's important to understand this. You know, what are you willing to do differently? Right? What are you willing to do differently? And also, how will you ensure that it will happen? So when we're sacrificing these things, like these things, we put a meaning to it. And that's why it's so hard to break away from it, because the things that are sucking up our time and taking up our time are the things that we enjoy doing, which then creates dopamine, which makes us feel happy. And then we just keep doing more of it, right? It's kind of like, I don't know, when you are having a lot of sugar. I remember the times when diets, when I'm eating a lot of sugar, like the more sugar you eat, the more of the sugar you eat. The more you cut it out, the less that you want it, right? So it becomes addictive. So let's do this little exercise. I want to do a written exercise, and I want you to tell me, based on some of the things that we've just mentioned, these sort of points here, like what are you willing to give up? What's sucking up your time? What are you spending your time doing? And what are you doing differently? I want you to type it into the chat box for me, and I'm gonna give you 1 minute just to, again, you don't have to think hard about this because you already know this stuff. And let's be honest with ourselves, right? I want you to type into the chat box, what are some of the things that you're going to commit to? What are some of the things you're going to give up? What are the things that you're going to sacrifice that you know is sucking up your time? All right. So I'm going to give you 1 minute to type into the chat box. Ready? And go. All right. And pause right there. Pause right there. Wow, we've got a lot of things. Yeah, online shopping, responding to emails. That's why I never respond to emails. Time lost, particularly in courses. Actually, that's not time lost, because courses is giving knowledge. Actually, that comes to the next part as well, right? So you do have to make time for that, right? Social media surfing. So here's the thing: when you catch yourself doing that, make sure that you are just stopping and interrupting that pattern straight away. All right. Okay. The next part, written exercise. Sorry, the next part, number 2, the M is mastery, right? Mastery. So whenever we're mastering something, again, we talked about the 10,000 hour rule, right? So the question I have for all of you is this, right? What will you commit to every day, right? What will you commit to every day? And I've got a little typo there, right? But what will you commit to every single day? So for me, I commit to making social media posts every single day. That's why I've got millions of people following me now. Doesn't matter what platform I go on, I still do this. I still do the same thing. And that's been one of my non-negotiables, right? Also, skill set. What skill sets do you currently need to improve? So for me, I always look at the things that I'm not good at, and I look at the things that I am good at, right? So the things I'm good at in business, in marketing, in sales, I'm not that great at systems, right? So one thing I've been doing and really practicing a lot is actually learning how to improve the skill of systemization using software, using artificial intelligence, using partnerships, using plug and play processes, right? And by the way, is this something I need to do myself? No, but this is something that I do need to understand. So a skill set, I need to carve out time for that. Because if you don't carve out time for it, it's kind of like a muscle, isn't it? Like how many of you go to the gym, right? How many of you go to the gym on a regular basis? Type in yes if you do, right? If you go to the gym on a regular basis, right? I know a lot of you do. But the issue is when you don't work that muscle, right? And for example, you go to the gym and then you work it, the day after the muscle hurts, you feel pain. So, and it feels uncomfortable. But whenever you are looking to acquire a skill, the skill set is like a muscle. It needs to be worked on every single day, right? So the more you work on it, the less painful it becomes. And this is why you don't have to like just focus on one skill set. For some of you, it could be just be, speaking. It could just be organic marketing. It could just be paid marketing. But you need to focus on one of those things and improve that skill set over and over and over again. Because when you get good at it, when you master it, when you do it every single day, it starts becoming second nature. And the more second nature it is, the faster it is for you to implement. And that brings on onto the third thing, as I talk about that in a second. What's the daily training that you will do, right? So for me, my training is, someone mentioned about, courses, partaking in that is actually stuck up a lot of time. It is, but it's necessary because it's like planning, isn't it? 5 or 10 or 15 minutes of planning can save you a week in execution. Same with training, right? I had a friend recently who put $500,000 into a company, and he said it was one of the biggest mistakes he did because he didn't take the training on how to invest in a company. He just put $500,000 into it, right? So had he known and gone through the training, he could have known that he could have converted his consultancy fee into equity. He could have consulted his sweat equity into actual equity instead of putting $500,000 into it. So that training would have been necessary. Same for me. Like one thing that I am getting very clued up on is understanding what you can and can't do, right? And, especially when it comes to corporate governance, also protecting yourself as well, IP, trademarks, protecting assets, your intellectual property. That I'm taking training on this stuff every single day. So for me, for example, I'll go to IP lawyers, I'll go to litigation lawyers, I'll go to tax planning people, and I'll find out what I'm getting trained up in this, right? Because this is stuff I need to learn in order to grow bigger, right? The problem is when you make a lot of money, right? Especially here in the UK, you have to end up giving all the way, right? Which basically means like inheritance tax and things like that. There's a lot of challenges that come with that, right? So actually having a lot of money is also a problem, because, if you don't plan it properly, if you don't have a tax strategy, right, it can basically disappear, right? You can end up actually blowing your entire fortune, right? So, and there's certain laws that come in that stop you from doing things. So for example, when I'm mastering things, I'm mastering, okay, what can and can't you do, right? And I'm getting trained up in this stuff every single day, right? And also, how much time will you commit to do it? You have to carve out the time, my friends. If you don't put the time in, guess what? It gets sucked up by other things. How many of I'm talking about? Give me a yes. It just gets sucked up by other things, right? Your time just disappears. You suddenly have this whole free day, and then this day is no longer free anymore because it gets sucked up by other things, right? You know what I'm talking about. So that is why you must commit to a lot of these things that you do and put the time in to do it. And you need to do it no matter what, right? You have to do it no matter what. And I don't care if you have to sleep an hour earlier, or you have to wake up an hour earlier, or you have to do it in between shifts or whatever it is, but it has to be done. Because if it's not done, it won't get done. And you know what happens? You'll say, I'll do it tomorrow. I'll do it next week. I'll do it after that. And it becomes analysis paralysis, and it never gets done. How many of you can relate to this? Give me a yes. I've seen this pattern over and over and over again. I am also guilty of this pattern as well, right? But the thing is, I notice it. And as soon as you notice it, you have to interrupt it. Because if you don't interrupt it, you will follow through that process of not taking action and therefore not getting results. Because ultimately, you are responsible for your own results. No one else is going to do it for you, right? How do you interrupt it? You interrupt it by, first of all, being conscious of it. So, for example, when I find myself going through TikTok video after video after video, I must consciously stop myself and have a routine or have a drill, not a drill, like, like a drilling a hole, like a drill, like a process that happens. So, for example, no, I don't use a timer. I just literally get my phone. If I find myself doing it, I'll take my phone and I'll throw it like into a pillow. I'll throw it onto the couch, right? And it sounds a bit a bit like addictive, but like something you got to do. That is an interruption to yourself, right? The moment you find yourself thinking to yourself, oh, you know what, like I want to go training today, like you must interrupt it by noticing yourself trying to talk yourself out of it, right? So what I'll do is I'll immediately put my trainers on before I put my shorts on, because now it interrupts the whole process, doesn't it? It's like, oh, I put my trainers on now. Okay, how am I going to put my shorts on? So it knocks me out of procrastination and puts me into implementation. Does this make sense? By the way, give me a yes. Give me a yes if this makes sense. Sometimes if I'm doing a clubhouse room, like sometimes I don't want to do a clubhouse room. I just go, you know what? Just put any title on the first thing that comes into your head and hit start a room. Now I'm forced to do it. All right, you see how that works? So actually mastery is actually knowing how much time you're going to put into it, but the time that you commit, anytime you catch yourself talking yourself out of it, you must create that interruption. Now, obviously it's going to be an interruption for, for every single one of you. For some of you, it might just be like, if I'm feeling sometimes that actually I'm not motivated, go to a song and I'll anchor a song to myself and I'll play that song to myself, right? Sometimes it's okay. I don't feel motivated to do anything. Okay, my procedure, my own SOP, standard operating procedure for myself. A lot of people have an SOP for the business, but they don't have an SOP for themselves. How many of them talking about? Give me a yes, right? So headphones in, I just go for a walk, right? So you have to find that interruption for commitment level anytime you find yourself talking yourself out of it. So, and also how you test it, right? Actually, a really good one that a lot of people do is you want to get an elastic band, a thick one, right? Anytime you find yourself falling into that routine, basically you want to ping yourself. So basically pull the elastic band and let it go, and it'll hit you and it'll cause pain, right? So that's actually a very basic one that people do. And that I've tried in the past. So that also works, but you need to do something that's weird, that you would not normally do. Sometimes it could be, let's say you're thinking about training. You know what? Just jump on the floor and start doing some push-ups, So this is an SOP for yourself, right? Don't give yourself time to talk yourself out of it, right? Like, just do it, and when you do it, it creates momentum and it forces you to do it. So let's do a little written exercise here. What's going to be your pattern interrupt? What's going to be your pattern interrupt to make sure that you enforce one of these 5 things for mastery level? Okay, so I'll give you a few moments to do that. Ready? And begin. All right, and pause right there. Pause right there. Actually, coffee for me is actually a big one, because it creates that clarity as well. So it depends, obviously, in moderation. You can do jumping jacks. Sometimes it might just be a word that you say, right? So a word caused by an action, because what happens is you just snap yourself out of that. Because when we go down this lane of procrastination, what happens is the further down the road that we go, the deeper we go into it and the harder it is to get out. So whenever we snap ourselves out of it, we basically snap out and then we can do something, right? For some of you, it might be playing a sound to yourself, right? So for example, you could set like a tone on your phone that just goes, that one that goes off, that really annoying alarm. But like, whatever you do has to annoy you, because when it annoys you, you go into you basically, like, you get out of your head when that happens. All right. So, and for some of you, it could be, watching like, sometimes I'll have these clips on my phone. Whenever I'm like feeling unmotivated, I'll just watch it, and it just breaks me out of that cycle. Or sometimes if I'm like working, I just want to go away from my desk. Like, maybe it's like breath work, like 1 minute of breath work. You see, entrepreneurs are not taught the necessary exercises that it would take in order to execute, like athletes do. Athletes have drills, they have training, they have, they're training every day. Entrepreneurs, we don't really have training, do we? It's kind of like we do it on the job, right? So that is mastery. Okay. Number 3, action. The word ACT, A-C-T, stands for action changes things. Action changes things. So this is why in the SMART goals, if you want to achieve your goal, how many of you agree that achieving your goal is a series of little actions that get you to that goal? For example, when I started JL.club, I said to myself, okay, my goal was actually to build it to 1,000 members, right? I actually exceeded that, because every single day I would go in Clubhouse, I would talk about something, and then I would say, by the way, if you want to join JL.club, go to www.jl.club. And I just did that every day for a year, right? And because of that, I was able to have a lot of different members joining, thousands of members joining, right? So action changes things. So how do we take more action? This is the $1 million question, isn't it? Like, well, John, like, how do I take more action? Well, do you guys want to know the secret? Type in yes, you want to know the secret? You take action by taking action. That's it, right? And sometimes people want like this magic answer, but you take action by taking action, right? Mark's gonna give a laugh at everything that stuff, right? But obviously there's a few nuances to that. The first one is schedule into your calendar, right? So when you're setting the goals, you need to put down in the calendar. For example, my speaking engagements for the next 12 months is full because I pre-planned them last year. So I already know what events I'm going to do. I'm going to know where I'm going to be. Obviously, sometimes that changes depending on my schedule. But for the most part, like I would say 90% of it's kind of set in stone. Or maybe 80% is set in stone. 20% I stay flexible. So whatever that you set to do, put it into the calendar, right? Because in the calendar, you need to have a meeting with yourself. Those of you that don't want to go to the gym, you need to schedule the meeting in your calendar with yourself. So I'll put meeting John Lee at 9 a.m., right? Because you never don't turn up for your meetings, right? Problem is, if it's not written down or scheduled in, it can get moved. It's a moving goalpost again. So schedule the time in, right? When you schedule the time in, it's written, it gets done. Okay. Also, what's that one daily commitment? So as I mentioned to you, for me, it was making a post. It was doing a clubhouse room every single day. That was one of my commitments, right? That I would do every single day, right? Another daily commitment is I go for at least a 15, 20-minute walk, right? I need to walk between 2 to 3 miles every single day. And in that 2 to 3 miles, I need to listen to a podcast. I need to listen to an audiobook. I need to listen to something that feeds my brain, not music, right? Even though music does feed your brain, puts you into a different state. But when you are learning things, you are hitting dopamine. This is why if you look at a lot of billionaires, they are some of the most inquisitive people in the world. They always have this thirst for learning. That's one trait that I've noticed in a lot of billionaires, is that they don't think they know everything. A lot of my billionaire friends are asking me questions. I said, why are you asking me this, Glenn? Like, you're a billionaire, I'm not. Right? And they're like, well, John, I want to learn this, I want to learn this. And I guess that's why they're billionaires. So you got to write down, like, what is the one commitment that you are going to do no matter what, right? And I know a lot of you know what that's going to be. So you have to make sure that you have that commitment, okay? And so, look, maybe the commitment, Mark, for you is people reach out to you. Look, one of the ways to become successful is to learn to say no to things. One of them, I'm also the same, right? For me, I never want to pass up any other opportunities because there's so many opportunities that come to me. But my strength is also my weakness. Oh, John, do you want to do that? Oh, yeah, let's do that. Oh, John, we'll start this business. Yeah, let's do that. Oh, John, I got this idea for this. You want to do it? Yeah, let me put some money into that, right? So actually last year, I invested a lot of money into a lot of companies. Had I put that money into other things that I was personally doing, my business probably would have grown 3 or 4 times more, right? So sometimes, yes, we want to help people. Yes, we want to impact people. Remember what they say on the plane. When there's turbulence, when there's the masks fall down, you put it on yourself first before you put it on other people. How can you take care of the people if you can't even take care of yourself? This is why this is a must. One daily commitment is a must. It's a non-negotiable. So I want you to start thinking about this right now before we do this exercise. What is a non-negotiable for you? What is a non-negotiable? It has to, for example, my friends who are chiseled, a non-negotiable for them is they have to go to the gym no matter what, right? Number 3, by taking action, by following and scheduling in, by committing to it every day, what will happen is you're going to fail fast. And when you fail fast, you will get feedback of what to do and what not to do, right? And actually, the failures is the gateway to success. But the problem is people don't get that feedback. They don't get the failure. And because of that, they are not able to achieve more success. This is why you want to take more action, because you're not going to get it right the first time. right? It might take the second, third, fourth, fifth, 10th time. You know, I ran events for years and lost a lot of money in events until I got it right, right? So it's all the failures that actually have been now turned into success. So I know what's going to work and what's not going to work, or I have a pretty good idea of what's going to work and what's not going to work. I have a pretty good idea on the expectations of when I'm doing something. So you have to make sure that you, like, for example, like my wife, a non-negotiable for her, she does yoga almost every day. I wake up in the morning, I see her in the gym, right? I say, oh yeah, where's, and I'll say to my daughter, like, where's mom? Oh, she's in the gym. I'll say to my house manager, oh, where's my wife? Oh, yeah, she's in the gym, right? So that's a non-negotiable, and she spends like a couple of hours in there, you know. Right? Start with the low-hanging fruit. Now, you've probably been told in the past that you should start with your hardest task first. How many of you have heard of that before? How many of you have heard of that before? Start with the hardest thing first. That to me never made sense, because if you start with the hardest thing first, the amount of motivation needed to even do that in the first place, let alone the easy stuff, right, is so hard. This is why if you're trying to start off with the hardest things first, I find it extremely difficult to start off with the hardest things first. What I like to do is start with the easy things first, or not the easy things, the low-hanging fruit. Low-hanging fruit is, what's the easy win for me now? For example, in business, what's one thing I can do that will instantly make me money? Right? There's things that I can do that can make me money long term, but what's the things I can do instantly right now that will make me money? And when I understand that, guess what? These things that make me money, low-hanging fruit, guess what? Creates a result, creates feedback, creates success, creates little wins, and it's all the little wins that add up to the big thing, right? So personally for me, I'm very, I guess, contrarian to the concept of start with the hard things first. No, don't start with the easy things first. Start with the low-hanging fruit first. Does that make sense to you, by the way? Give me a yes if that makes sense. All of you know what the low-hanging fruit is right now, right? You know the things that are going to be the easy wins that is going to create an instant result. That is the thing that you need to be doing first. That is the thing you need to be doing first. Okay? Yeah, and it's value generating actions, right? Basically, the fifth point here, I talk about what's going to actually move the needle. So when people always ask me, oh, John, but I don't know what to do, start with the thing that's the lowest hanging fruit that's going to move the needle. That's it, right? That answers all the questions of every single one of you that keep asking me, John, what should I do first? I don't know where to start. Oh, there's so much knowledge. Oh, there's so much this, blah, blah, blah. That's just an excuse, by the way. That's you giving yourself a way out. Actually, you know where the low-hanging fruit is. You know what's going to instantly make money. You know what's actually going to move the needle and get a result. Problem is, you haven't scheduled it in. You have no time for it. You haven't trained for it, right? Your success is not meeting the opportunity, the process of that. So actually, what's going to move the needle? So I'm going to do an exercise now. I'm going to type in what is the one commitment that you will commit to that is a non-negotiable, right? I'm going to give you 1 minute to type it in. 1 minute, ready, and go. And pause right there. Pause right there. Good. So we've got some great things here. Promote. Yeah, Claire, you gotta do it every day. That is a non-negotiable. Like, that's the one for me as well. Like, I've got to do some kind of promotion every day. Okay, good. Let's move to the next one. Right, number 4 is to repeat. Right. So when you've taken the action, look at the results. Right. Discard the things that don't work. Do you know the funny thing about some students that I've worked with? Like, they do something. Oh, John, I did this and it made me 50,000, and they stop doing it. I said, why did you stop doing it? Keep doing it. Right? Do you know why they don't do it? Because they're looking for something else. They're looking for something new. They're looking for something more sexy. I want to tell you this right now. Becoming rich is actually quite boring. Right? Making money is actually sometimes quite boring, because it's the repetition of the things that produce the result that you do over and over and over again. So sometimes there's not even variety in it. Right? So it's very counterintuitive sometimes. And once you found that result that works, you double down on that until it stops working. Right? You double down on that until it stops working. Right? So, and then you tweak, you measure, and improve. So let's do this little written exercise. I want to ask you this question. What have you been doing recently that has worked and then you stopped doing it? Right? What have you been doing recently or over the last 6 to 12 months that worked, but you stopped doing it? I'm going to give you a couple of moments to type it in. Ready, and go. All right, and pause right there. Pause right there. Do you know one thing that I stopped doing? Of course, this was during the whole COVID thing. I actually stopped going to a lot of networking events. And when I stopped going to a lot of networking events, my deal flow stopped. One thing I stopped doing is searching for property in the areas that I wanted to buy. And guess what? Because of that, I didn't get any property. Recently, I started looking for more property in the area. And guess what? I found 2 great deals, central London, that I bought. Right? So whenever you are in it, like, sometimes I also forget, like, there's things that I've done in the past. I thought, oh my God, why did I stop doing that? Right? It got a result. So sometimes you have to keep reminding yourself. That's why repetition is the mother of all skill. Right? Number 5, treating yourself. Right? So how do we treat ourselves? Well, you need to celebrate the little wins. Why do you need to celebrate the little wins? Because it resets your motivation. And by doing that, what are some of the small rewards and what are some of the big rewards that you're going to get? And this is the thing. So when I used to work in the film industry, in the game industry, I used to test games. And what we would find is every time you create a new level, like when you play games on level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4, if level 1 and level 2 were miles apart, people would stop playing the game. But if level 2 was just within arm's reach of level 1, people would continue to play. This is the same concept I'm applying here to the treat and the SMART goals. Whenever you set your goals, the small wins that a lot of you are not even doing anyway, and a small win could be cinema night. A small win could be, a dinner at your favorite restaurant. A small win could be, buying that dress that you've always wanted. A treat could be like whatever it is. You need to write down what the small wins are. Big rewards could be, hey, you know what? Once I've achieved this first milestone, you all need to set milestones this year as well, right? Once I've achieved this milestone, I'm going to go to Bali for 2 weeks, right? Or once I achieve this milestone, I'm going to go and buy the new BMW or Mercedes. Once I've achieved this milestone, I'm going to build that school that I've always wanted to build, right? Once I've achieved this milestone, I'm going to take 3 weeks out and go to a homeless shelter and serve, right? Whatever it is, like you got to make sure that we are creating. And by the way, those of you who tend to do this and you tend to basically veer off track, and then you basically so this is a way to almost guarantee that you can be self-motivated because you follow a process, right? So sometimes with having an accountability buddy, sometimes you get depressed because they are not achieving the result that they should be getting when you're doing it yourself. So this is how I found, because people said, John, how do you keep yourself motivated all the time? Because I have an SOP for myself. I have contingencies in place that I know that when I rear out of it, this happens. So this is why discipline is created. And sometimes, and this is why when I move on to this next step, right? In fact, before we do that, I want you to write down what treats are you, like what are the little wins and what are the big wins? And then I'm going to teach you this one thing that will almost guarantee that you when you veer off process, it will bring you back if you implement it. Okay. So what are some of the little wins and what are some of the big wins that you're going to do? I'll give you a few moments, type it in, ready and go. Musicals are good. I love musicals. Actually, that was one of my little wins. Jersey Boys is good. I love Jersey Boys. I don't know if you've seen Jersey Boys, but big win, travel and buy my car. Yeah. All right. And pause right there. Pause right there. One of my big wins, as you know, that my relationship with my parents, and I didn't get to see them for a little while when they retired. I said to myself, when my parents retire, I'm going to give them one of the biggest presents that I could ever give. For years, my parents lived in a very small house. It's like every house they lived in is a very small house. So when they retired, my big win was I'm going to buy them $1 million property. And I did. And it's a couple of 1,000 square foot in a really great area. And that for me was a big win. And so the big win doesn't have to be for you. A big win could be for somebody else. A big win could be when I hit this goal, I'm going to pay off, my family member's debt, for example. That could be a win. Or I'm going to pay for this person's procedure. Or, I know this person works really hard. I'm going to buy them a holiday to go to Bali, for example. Right? So a win is not always for you. And actually, do you know what's so really, what's beautiful about this? How many of you have done something else for somebody else and it felt 10 times better than doing it for you? Type in yes. Type in yes. This is one of the magical moments of this. It's actually a big realization. This is why a lot of entrepreneurs are also philanthropists as well. Right? So now that you've got these 5 things, let me quickly go into the 5 strategies and recap this so you really understand some of the ways to implement and some of the strategies to do that. Right? First of all, again, to summarize, decide what you want. Right? And you go, well, John, I don't know what I want. Okay, decide what you don't want. Right? A lot of people, I decide that I love to travel around the world. Right? I love to travel to different locations. So I put this in the goals and I set my goals around that. Right? Otherwise, if you don't set it, then it never really starts to come into fruition. Right? You start planning around it instead of planning with it. cut off anything that's no longer serving you, right? And this sounds harsh. It could be a partner. It could be a business partner. It could be a friend. It could be a husband, wife, girlfriend, spouse, business partner. It could be a business that you've invested in or part of that's no longer serving you. It could be a process that you've been doing that's no longer serving you. It could be substances that you're taking that's no longer serving you. It could be things that are distracting you, right? And when I say cut off, obviously you need to think about it if it's something very personal to you. But over the years, you know, I've had a lot of things come into my life that I thought was good and ended up being complete opposite, and just drained my energy for years. And so I've decided I will no longer tolerate that, and I got to make hard decisions. And I'll tell you why. Time is very scarce. Time is we ain't getting any younger, right? So anything, you write on all the things that are not serving you, and before you make the decision to cut it off, scale of 1 to 10, how severe is it? So if you have an addiction, I don't know whatever that addiction is. If you're listening to right now, a lot of the world's gone through anxiety, going through a lot of depression, and to combat that, they have to use some kind of thing to overcome it. So write it all down privately. For those of you, obviously don't type in chat, write it down privately and write on a scale of 1 to 10. How severe is it? How severe is it? Is it stopping you? Because sometimes you got to do the hard things. Sometimes you got to let go. Sometimes I felt this myself, a big weight on your shoulders that you just need to get rid of, right? And so, you know, people go through a lot of things. They go through a lot of challenges. And so I've decided now I'm going to cut everything off that is no longer serving me. Stop the bad habits and make daily small commitments. And to do that, and here's the one thing that will always ensure that will stop you from those distractions, is to create a pact or a contract, right? You heard me talk about this before, but if you haven't, basically, this is a contract, right? A contract, and I'll tell you the story of this, right? Some of you may or may have not heard the story of this, but I told some of this stories in the past. But basically, Ulysses wanted to hear the siren song, although he knew that it was doing would render him incapable of rational thought. He would put wax in the men's ears so that he could not hear them, and tie them down to the mast so he could not jump into the sea. He ordered them not to change the course under any circumstances, and to keep the swords upon him to attack him if he should break free of the bonds. Upon hearing the siren song, Ulysses was driven temporarily insane and struggled with all his might to break free so that he might join the sirens, right? Which would have meant his death. His men, however, kept him promise and refused to release him. So this is what Ulysses was on a journey of discovery. Basically, down this path is gold, is riches, is wealth. But these sirens are basically, when you hear them, they basically hypnotize you, and you walk into the sea and basically to your death. So the metaphor here is, do you know if certain things happen, it will lead you down to the sirens. It will lead you to be distracted. I know that if my friend calls me, a particular person who calls me, if I pick the phone up, I'm going out. So guess what my Ulysses contract is? If I'm working, I'm doing something, that person calls, I cut them off, right? I don't even pick the phone up. I cut them off. Sounds harsh, but because I know if I pick that person's call up, right, I'm going out, right? I'm going to drop everything. I'm going to go out, right? So you need the Ulysses pact / contract with yourself, right? I know that there are certain things that I do that cause me to not implement. And you all know what your weaknesses are. So you need to create a Ulysses contract that will have a contingency if that happens. You don't even want it to happen. It's like, for example, those of you on a diet right now, you want to get in better shape. You know that if you've got chocolate biscuits in your cupboards Do you know what I do all the time? This sounds weird. I go out, I go shopping, I buy all this really unhealthy food, like chocolate biscuits, crisps, chocolate, all that kind of stuff. I put it in my cupboard, right? And sure enough, right, when I'm hungry, when my food's not ready, or when something hasn't come in, I start making a cup of tea, I start dipping into the biscuits, and I basically finish a whole pack of digestive biscuits. So what's my ULAS contract? Anytime that happens, before I take the biscuits, I quickly throw them in the bin. Right? That's my ULAS contract. I can't eat them now. They're in the bin. Right? So the ULAS contract and the pact to yourself means that it will stop you from doing the thing that causes you to not implement. Right? So I want you to write down, this will be our last exercise before we wrap up on this. What is a ULAS contract that you will hold to yourself no matter what? Okay? No matter what. I'll give you a few moments to type it in. Ready? And go. You don't have to type it into the chat box if you don't want to. Write it down, because this could be personal for some of you as well. And pause right there. Pause right there. Another ULAS contract I personally have, by the way, is I make sure that if I'm in bed, right, and I've got these ideas in my head, I make sure that that I don't if my mind starts to wander, like it happens all the time. I'm sleeping and I wake up, my mind starts to wander, and then I can't sleep, right? And so I basically have this cut that as soon as it happens, I notice that I shut my mind off. So there's a lot of these things that you can do. All right. By the way, you don't have to type into the chat box if it's personal to you, but a lot of you know what you need to do. I don't need to tell you what to do. All right. So the new SMART goal strategy is number 1, sacrifice. Number 2, mastery. Number 3, action. Number 4, repeat. And number 5, treat. Okay, this, my friends, is how you set new goals using the new SMART strategy, right? How many got a lot of value from this? Give me a yes if you got a lot of value from this, right? Because I want you to implement this right now. You've got to do whatever it takes. So your homework is to implement the new SMART strategy that I just mentioned to you. And I want you to implement it every single day and hold yourself accountable. Because you know what they say? The more action you take, the more money you make. I really hope you got a lot of value from this. Please take massive, massive action. All right. So again, really hope that you got a lot of value from that. I think for